Dear friends, welcome to Civil Services audio tutorials from Audio Education Forum. The presentation of study material in these cassettes is in the following manner. First, a descriptive analytical description of the concerned topic. Second, presenting the objective and fact-based information on the topic after the analytical discussion. In this manner, we shall try to bring conceptual clarity to the topic and at the same time be ready with all essential facts important from examination point of view. The material in the following cassettes is comprehensive as well as precise and to the point. You will need to listen to these audio notes at least twice or thrice to get complete command over the study material. Once you have listened to these audio notes 2 or 3 times, you will find out for yourself the extreme utility of these audio notes for your success. The material in these cassettes is updated according to the latest year's syllabus. Current affairs cassettes are updated till 1.5 months prior to the exams and are issued accordingly. The sections for general studies prelims include Indian history, ancient, medieval and modern, Indian polity, Indian geography, general science, Indian economy, current affairs, and miscellaneous topics of general knowledge. Before we proceed to start with the subject, we would like to say a few words about the nature of the general studies paper in the civil services preliminary exams. The syllabus in the civil services is very hazy and vast, with no clearly defined boundaries. So, it might happen that you end up reading things which are connected with the syllabus, but are practically irrelevant from your preparation point of view. So, it is necessary that you get a feel of what the examiner expects from you. For this, keep a copy of the syllabus and side by side keep the previous year's papers. Compare them and see what types of questions are repeated every year. Try to have a feel as to what constitutes important portions of the syllabus and what is irrelevant. Try to form boundaries of the syllabus. This analysis will give you an in-depth insight into the paper and the examiner's mind. This will make you understand which topics need intensive study. This will also enable you to identify unnecessary portions which are not important from the point of view of your examination, so that you may avoid them and save your precious time and energy. Questions asked in the general studies paper from different areas by a rough estimate are in the following manner. Area, Indian history. Number of questions, 35. Science, including agriculture and animal husbandry, 35 questions. Geography, 15 questions. Economics, 15 questions. Polity, 15 questions. Current affairs, including sports, 15 questions. General mental ability, 15 questions. Miscellaneous questions on art, culture, tribes, etc., 5. Total, 150 questions. The breakup that has been mentioned in the table is only a rough estimate, and in the actual examination, you should not expect the pattern exactly adhering to the above estimate. Secondly, the orientation of the question, especially in the areas like polity, economics, geography and science, will be towards what is current. For example, you may be asked to name a variety of rice or wheat recently developed by the Indian Council of Agricultural Research. Similarly, you may be given a set of names of few places and asked what is common about them. They could all be the names of the place where oil was discovered by the ONGC recently. Therefore, even while preparing the respective subjects as per your general studies syllabus, keep your eyes on current details.
The prehistoric period. History is a record of the achievements of man. The history of India, like the annals of every other country, should therefore begin with an account of the times when men first settled in this land. But history proper only deals with facts, and facts can only be known from records of some kind or other. We cannot know the history of any people who have left no record of their existence. There may have been people or peoples who lived in India in primitive times, but the evidence of whose existence has not yet been discovered. For the present, at any rate, they must be left out of account altogether. We shall only deal with those inhabitants of India whose existence is known to us from some records they have left behind. To begin with, these records consist almost solely of the rude implements which the people used in their daily lives. According to the nature and material of these implements, the earliest settlers in India have been divided into two classes, Paleolithic and Neolithic. Paleolithic men. The term Paleolithic is derived from two Greek words meaning old stone. This name is applied to the earliest people, as the only evidence of their existence is furnished by a number of crude stone implements. These are small pieces of rough, undressed stones, chipped into various forms, which were originally fitted with handles made of sticks or bones. They served as weapons for hunting wild animals and could also be used as hammers or for purposes of cutting and boring. These chipped stones have been found in large numbers in different parts of India. They are usually, though not exclusively, made of a species of hard rock called quartzite. From this fact, the Paleolithic men in India are also known as quartzite men. From the rough and crude stone implements, which are the only records left behind by the earliest known inhabitants of India, we can form only a very vague idea of their lives and habits. It is obvious that they were ignorant of any metals, and most of them had no fixed homes, though a few might have made huts of some sort with trees and leaves. They lived in constant dread of wild animals like tigers, lions, elephants, and the rhinoceros. They had no idea of agriculture, but lived on the flesh of animals and such fruits and vegetables as grew wild in jungles. They could not make pottery and probably did not even know how to make a fire. In short, from our standpoint, we can only regard them as savages, little removed from an animal life. It is well to remember this if we are to judge aright the long strides that men have made in developing that culture and civilization of which we are so justly proud today. It has been suggested that the Paleolithic men belonged to the Negrito race, like the modern people of the Andaman Islands, and were characterized by short stature, dark skin, woolly hair, and flat noses. Neolithic men. The capacity for progress is, however, an inherent characteristic of human beings which distinguishes them from animals. Consequently, as years rolled by, men acquired greater knowledge and skill in mastering the forces of nature. The rate of progress is, of course, difficult to estimate, and it may have been hundreds or thousands of years before a distinctly higher type of civilization was evolved in India. The men who belong to this age are called Neolithic. This term is also derived from two Greek words meaning new stone. The significance of this name lies in the fact that in this age also men had to depend solely on stone implements, and were ignorant of any metals except gold. But their implements were very different from those of the preceding age, for they used stones other than quartzite, and these were not merely chipped, but in most cases ground, grooved, and polished as well. They were highly finished articles made into different pieces. They can be easily and crude implements of the Paleolithic age. Remains of the Neolithic men are found in almost every part of India. An ancient factory for the manufacture of stone implements has been discovered in the Bellary district, where we can still trace the various stages of their construction. The civilization of the Neolithic men shows distinct traces domesticated animals like the ox and the goat. They knew the art of producing fire by the friction of bamboos or pieces of wood, and made pottery at first by hand and then with a potter's wheel. They lived in caves and decorated their walls by painting scenes of hunting and dancing. A few of these can be seen today both in northern and southern India. They also painted and decorated their pottery. They constructed boats and went out to sea. They could spin cotton and wool and weave cloth. They used to bury their dead, and Neolithic tombs have been discovered in some parts of India. Sometimes the dead body was put in a large urn, and many of these urns have been discovered intact under the ground. The tombs known as dolmens consist of 3 or more stone props in a circle, supporting a massive roof stone. These dolmens, or megalithic tombs, are characteristic of the Neolithic age all over the world. Scholars also distinguish a culture midway between Paleolithic and Neolithic and call it Mesolithic, from Greek meso, middle, hence known as microlith from Greek micro, small. And secondly, that instead of quartzite, they were made of chalcedony and other silicate varieties by a technical process differing from that employed in the Paleolithic age. The age of the Paleolithic and Neolithic men is called prehistoric, as we know hardly anything of this period save the meager evidence supplied by the cave drawings and stone implements. We have not even any definite knowledge regarding the relations between these two groups of men. There are indications that suggest that the Neolithic men may have been the descendants of their Paleolithic predecessors. But there are certain facts which militate against this view. Some scholars are of the opinion that not only are there no such relationships, but that there was a gap of many hundreds or thousands of years between the two periods. So long as our evidence remains as meager as it is now, there will always be scope for such differences of opinion, and we shall have to deal with theories or hypotheses based on speculations. The question, however, belongs to the domain of anthropology rather than history and need not be pursued any further. The age of metals. There is, however, a general agreement that Neolithic men were the ancestors of the people who ushered in the next stage of civilization, which is distinguished by the knowledge and use of metals. That the transition from stone to metal was a slow and gradual process is proved by 2 undeniable facts: the use of stone and metallic implements side by side, and the close resemblance in the shape of early metal and Neolithic implements. There was, however, no uniformity in the use of metals in different parts of India. In northern India, copper replaced stone as the ordinary material for tools and weapons. Axes, swords, spearheads, and various other objects made of that metal have come to light in different parts of the country. It was not till centuries later that iron came to be known and gradually used as a substitute for copper. We can thus distinguish between a Copper Age and the early Iron Age in northern India. In southern India, however, the Iron Age immediately succeeded the Stone Age, and we find no traces of the intermediate Copper Age. Bronze is a good substitute for copper. It is an alloy made up of 9 parts of copper and 1 of tin, and being harder than copper is more suitable for the manufacture of tools and weapons. We find accordingly that in some countries in Europe a Bronze Age succeeded the Neolithic. Bronze implements of early date have been found in India along with those of copper, but it does not appear that the metal was ever generally used in India to the exclusion of copper. In other words, there was, properly speaking, no Bronze Age in India. With the Copper and Iron Ages, we enter the limits of the historical period. It is a moot point to decide whether the period of the Rig Veda, the earliest period of Indian history for which we possess literary evidence, belongs to the former or to the latter epoch. The general opinion is in favor of the view that the Iron Age had already commenced when the Rig Veda was composed. Be that as it may, we have now a splendid example of the civilization of the Copper Age. This civilization flourished in the Indus Valley and spread over the neighboring regions to a considerable distance. It is known as the Indus Valley Civilization and merits a detailed treatment in view of its importance. But before taking it up, we must say a few words about the races of India. Classes of people. If we examine the people of India, both according to physical type and language, we can easily distinguish 4 broad classes. First, the majority of high-class Hindus who are tall, fair-skinned, and long-nosed, and whose language is derived from Sanskrit. These are known as Aryans or Indo-Aryans. Secondly, the people mostly living in the South Indian peninsula, whose features are somewhat different from those of the first group, and whose languages, Tamil, Telugu, Kannadese, and Malayalam, are entirely different from Sanskrit. These are called by the generic name of Dravidians. Thirdly, primitive tribes living in hills and jungles who offer a striking contrast to the first category in physical type, being short in stature, dark-skinned, and snub-nosed. Their languages are also quite different from those of the preceding 2. The Kols, Bhils, and Mundas belong to this class. Fourthly, a people with strong Mongolian features, beardless, yellow in color, snub-nosed, with flat faces and prominent cheekbones. These mostly live on the slopes of the Himalayas and mountains of Assam. The Gurkhas, Bhutias, and Khasis are striking examples of this class. The last 2 classes of people may be regarded as descendants of the Neolithic peoples. We have already referred to the primitive type of civilization in the Neolithic age, and it does not appear that these peoples have made any appreciable progress during the thousands of years that have elapsed since then. There is hardly any doubt that these primitive races at one time spread all over India. But they had to yield to the superior forces of the Dravidians, who gradually occupied some of their lands. The same process was repeated when large tracts of the country were conquered at a later time by the Aryans. The effect of these successive invasions by more cultured races on the primitive peoples was far-reaching. Many must have perished, and many more, reduced to subjection, formed the lowest strata in the community of the conquerors, while a few bands were saved from a similar fate by the shelter offered by fastnesses and jungles. This last category alone has preserved, to a certain extent, the physical features, the languages, and the habits of the remote ancestors, offering us a fair glimpse of the sort of life they must have lived in times long gone by. Philological researchers have established a connection between these Neolithic peoples of India and the primitive tribes that lived in Indochina, the Malay Peninsula, and the Indian archipelago. The German scholar Schmidt, for example, holds that the languages of the Mundas and Khasis belongs to the same family of speech called Austric, from which those of the peoples of Indochina and Indonesia have been derived. According to this view, these peoples, who were originally settled in India, passed gradually to the east and southeast and traversed at first the whole length of the Indo-Chinese peninsula and then over all the islands of the Pacific Ocean up to its eastern extremity. Schmidt further believed that another current of emigration of the same people also started from India, but turned more directly towards the south and touching only the western fringe of the Pacific Ocean, proceeded, perhaps by way of New Guinea, towards the continent of Australia. According to Schmidt's view, the Neolithic men of India played a dominant part in the early history of Southeastern Asia. But his theory has already been challenged by other scholars and can only be regarded as a provisional hypothesis. The Indus Valley Civilization. In recent years, archaeological excavations have been carried on at Mohenjo-daro in the Larkana district, Sindh, and at Harappa in the Montgomery district of the Punjab. These and smaller trial excavations at various other sites in Sindh, Baluchistan, Punjab, and even further east and south have proved beyond doubt that some 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, a highly civilized community flourished in these regions. The antiquity of civilization in India is thus carried back nearly to the same period which witnessed the growth of ancient civilizations in Egypt, Assyria, and Babylonia. The valley of the Indus thus takes its rank with the valleys of the Nile, the Tigris, and the Euphrates as having contributed to the most ancient phase of human civilization of which we are yet aware. Unfortunately, we have no written records about the Indus Valley civilization comparable to those we possess in respect of the others. A number of seals have been discovered with a few letters engraved on each, but these still remain undeciphered. We are therefore totally ignorant of the political history of the Indus Valley and are not in a position to form an adequate idea of its culture and civilization. We possess, at best, a vague and general idea of the subject which is entirely derived from a careful examination of the objects unearthed at Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. Mohenjo-daro, Mound of the Dead, is the local name of a high mound situated in the plains of Larkana in a narrow strip of land between the main bed of the Indus River and the western Nara Canal. The surrounding region is wonderfully fertile and is called even today Nakhlistan, or the Garden of Sindh. Here a city was built some 5,000 years ago. This city was successively destroyed and rebuilt no less than 7 times, the inundation of the Indus being perhaps the chief agency of destruction. The rebuilding did not always immediately follow the destruction, but sometimes the city remained in ruins for a considerable period before a new city rose upon them. Thus, after the foundation of the city, many centuries passed before it was finally abandoned.